What is a weed? The popular definition is a plant in the wrong place, which makes almost everything eligible from a hawthorn tree growing in the Liffey to an oak in the middle of Croke Park. I am drawn to weeds for their intrinsic physical traits, but also as a means of engaging with more intangible issues. This body of work uses contemporary storytelling while also delving into Irish mythology to explore the weed as a metaphor for both a sense of uprootedness and resilience as it applies to an older generation of inner-city Dubliners. By examining weeds, soil and oral stories from the inner city, I create a space for inquiry and reflection. Living specimens situated alongside detailed botanic etchings and prints, uprooted and floating in space, reveal the intricate infrastructure which hides beneath the surface of the Irish soil. Influenced by the Irish folk story Armid's Cloak, I continue the pursuit to collect and explore the often trodden and unloved plants, depicting them as precious beings amongst the urban landscape worthy of our attention. I suffer from a condition called endometriosis that causes me to have extreme pain. I use art as an outlet to try to process my pain. To represent the violent pain that is happening in my body, I have hammered into copper plates with various steel tools. The physicality of the copper plates is juxtaposed by the softness and delicate nature of the prints. I treat the plate as if it is my body, and the hammering represents the damage that this disease is having on my physical and mental health. The prints are physical evidence and recordings of how my body has been affected over time, as endometriosis is a hidden illness and is very hard to diagnose. Capturing the process through video is also important, as it demonstrates the violent nature of how the prints are made and in turn how my pain is actualized in visual form. My practice uses the urban landscape as a means to explore the materiality and architecture of the city. The new wave of commercial development in Dublin is an extreme point of research given the rapidity of these redevelopments. I use photography as a means to record elements of the city, to explore both the built-up areas and the torn down. I isolate sections of architecture that interest me, concentrating on angles and depth within the facades of these buildings. The development of this work saw the transformation of 2D into 3D work, spanning substrates such as wood, aluminium and steel. These materials are pivotal in the construction industry and are closely interlinked to the fabric of the city. This body of work culminates in a visual exploration of constructed space, concentrating on buildings and places that, to me, illustrate the transformation of the city. A symposium is a philosophical discussion in which participants exchange ideas and opinions to create meaning. According to Plato's Symposium, humans were once rounded and were two people of different genders, or the same gender attached together. However, one day, the god Zeus split them apart. In this exhibition, I have created my own queer symposium. Working with the Midlands LGBTQIA2+ project, the queer symbols of the binder and the pink triangle were commented on and reacted to in a series of open discussions. This resulted in the recording of personal testimonies with 3 different people of different genders from the group. These recordings were laid over moving images of copperplate etchings of gender-ambiguous figures inspired by Plato. That later grew in scale and ambition to become an animated film of 20 minutes and 38 seconds. This archive is home to a small collection of animal studies, which are now extinct. It was established in the year 2076 to commemorate the variety of life that was lost due to deforestation, poaching, and other destructive activities. Inside, you will find something of the last remaining images of these creatures, which consist of prints and drawings. The collection includes detailed studies of teeth, horns, claws, and other body parts that these animals were killed for. You will also encounter prints depicting the animals attempting to escape the gaze of humans. If more care and consideration was given to these species, we would have variety, diversity, and nature still surrounding us. Do you think there are any ways you could help the few remaining creatures we share our home with? The collective unconscious, a concept originally defined by psychoanalyst Carl Jung, refers to the idea that the deepest unconscious mind is common to mankind as a whole. Adopting a socially engaged practice, I collaborate with people experiencing homelessness in Dublin City. Through conversation on the streets and drawing workshops held at drop-in centres, I open the door of unconscious, attempting to illuminate the imagination of people experiencing homelessness. Their dreams, etched in copper, transition from a fleeting imaginary narrative to a concrete form. Taking a unique approach to the tradition of patchwork protest art, my work is not a memorial for those who have lost their lives, but a cry for help for those that are still living. Each patch an individual story, the quilt a collective unconscious. The Peter McVerry Trust have supported the project during its development. 20% of all sales will be donated to the Peter McVerry Trust. There is conflict within all of us between the part striving for rational order and the other which is drawn to chaos and passion. In ancient Greek culture, there were two gods who personified this tension. Symbolic of reason and logical thinking was the sun god Apollo, while Dionysus, the god of wine, represented chaos and irrational emotion. Rigid logic can dampen emotion and self-expression, while frenzied passion without any inhibitions can become dangerous. It is somewhere in between these contrasting tendencies where our greatest potential can be actualized. In this body of work, the Apollonian becomes manifest through methodical etchings of representational figure drawing and geometric patterns. In contrast, the Dionysian is embodied through expressionistic dry-point mark-making and random improvisational motifs. My ambition is to produce visual harmony by synthesizing the abstract with the representational, echoing how the balance of our logical and emotional sides can create harmony in our experience of life. Living in the Anthropocene, human activity continues to have a negative impact on our environment. My work examines the human activity of deforestation in my homeland of Castleshane, County Monaghan. Exploring the term solastalgia, I reflect on the emotional connection that I hold with the forest and the disruption that deforestation has had on the natural biodiversity of the land. Mycelium networking systems play a huge role in the ecosystem of a forest. This fungal networking system connects tree roots together, supplying nutrients required for a flourishing forest, which is also known as the Wood Wide Web. My work explores how deforestation not only kills the trees, our main source of oxygen, but disrupts this magical networking system beneath the forest floor. My practice is concerned with how the built environment shapes and influences us. I am interested in how it has both a direct and indirect impact on our psyche, our movement through space, and our emotions. During COVID lockdowns, I started walking in my area of Tala. The more I explored, I began to feel trapped in my surroundings where high walls, fencing, metal railings, and encroaching foliage instilled a sense of confinement. It struck me that urban neighbourhoods like this one are structured to contain their population and govern movement. Railings are a recurring motif in my imagery. For me, they strongly symbolise a sense of isolation and constraint as they demarcate space and disconnect communities. The monochromatic colour palette is used to emphasise the unnerving environment that is felt in these spaces, especially at night. Overgrown plants and hedges darken the space further and conceal sight. Trailing paths and bends strip knowledge of what lies ahead, creating uncertainty and a sense of foreboding. My work goes by the title Women in Ag, Shitty Work. Through it, I consider the day-to-day struggles of being a woman working in agriculture. Within the world of farming comes shitty work, the shitty attitudes, the shitty comments, the poor accessibility for women on the farm, and often being seen as inferior. Despite this, there are aspects of farming that make it worthwhile to do as a woman. In this body of work, I examine the work done by women as well as their dedication to the farm that often goes unnoticed, but work that nonetheless keeps it running. The work encompasses images, objects, and text, all of which record this unacknowledged labour and the shit that comes with it. It celebrates and calls attention to the joyous and hurtful experiences from the point of view of women in agriculture. The continuity of nature compared to the fast-paced production and destruction caused by humans has been the springboard for my current body of work. Taking inspiration from derelict, overgrown spaces around Dublin, I look at how nature constantly renews itself and reclaims spaces and buildings that have been abandoned. This body of work imagines a perhaps not so distant future where there are only remnants of mankind and nature has taken over once more. While the man-made physical world will deteriorate, nature is constant. Found objects that have outlived their purpose play a role in my prints and assemblages. I admire the handmade, therefore my work has an imperfect, tactile quality. My printed pieces layer the mechanical lines of screen printing with more loose, fluid lines from etching. These different processes manifest the man-made and organic forms in my work, intertwining imagery of rubble and ruins with the fragility of new growth. This work is dedicated to capturing the ineffable. I explore mental health and the difficulty we have in sharing or communicating our struggles. To express this, I visually demonstrate that which cannot be expressed verbally, capturing my own personal outlook and experience into a visual form through print. Within my figurative etchings, one hand is used to represent the acknowledgement of the severity of the figure's state, whilst the other hand represents the complete ignorance of how the figure has trapped itself within this situation. At the height of my own personal mental state, I found the bed as my comfort. With the large digital print on fabric, I wanted to represent the idea that although it was a comfort, it gradually became a form that engulfed the body and eventually became more harmful than remedial. This work, and the etchings presented in repetition, reinforces the idea of the vicious cycle experienced by those who suffer with mental health.